As soon as lunch break started, Saki came into the infirmary. I thought it was too soon for her to show up if she stopped by my classroom first, but it turned out Club President texted her.
弥生先輩が兄さんを捕まえておいてくれて助かりました。
いつもご飯いただいているし、このくらいお安いご用よ。
So her behavior earlier was to stop me from escaping.
タオルってば、ちょっと優しくしてあげただけであんな素直になっちゃって。可愛いったらないわ。
Trying to get Saki jealous, huh? My face turned bright red. I wanted to roll over and run away for having looked so childish in front of Club Prez for even a moment.
兄さん、なんだかんだで美人に弱いですから。
Doesn't everyone? Even though she didn't know the details, Saki looked at me coldly.
また悪魔にうなされてたわけでもないみたいなんで、そこは良かったと思いますけど。
Yeah, I was just lazing around in that room with Alice. I replied carelessly, then realized that I had said what I had said. Club Prez tilted her head as if she were saying, Alice? Saki let out a like she didn't care as the air in the room grew strangely tense.
それで、兄さん、アリスって女は結局どこの誰なんですか？
Don't ask that question when you look at me like that, okay? It scares me. Saki gave me her biggest smile. I could sense the danger in the air. I was as good as dead. I don't know either. I could more or less understand why Saki would become involved in a dream where Maya appeared. But I didn't have a clue why that dream would have Alice, who neither Saki nor I knew.
そのアリスって誰よ？不思議の国のアリス？
Yeah, that's what I named the episode she debuted in. No, she said she doesn't actually know anything about herself. According to her, she just appears in dreams. Club Prez nodded and slurped her tea. What bad manners.
というか、あの女って何？なんでさきちゃんがその辺気にしてるのか、ちょっと気になるんだけどにゃー。
Club Prez looked like a cat who was about to be done in by her curiosity.
兄さんが話してもよければ、どうぞ。
I was about to ask Saki what I should do when she decided to cast me adrift. I couldn't get into too much detail, but Club Prez, this is just about a dream, okay?
ねえ、もちろん分かってるわ。
I wondered about that, but I roughly explained the dreams I had recently. The nightmare I'd had, Alice and the nightmare flowers. I didn't reveal the contents of the dream, but I talked about the fact that Saki and I had the same dream. The grammar makes sense, right? Saki and I had the same dream. I made a point to not tell Club Prez about Maya or the finer details of Saki's dream.
ふむ。同じ部屋に毎度出てくる女の子ね。そのどっちもトールは最近見始めたのよね。
Yeah, I'd never seen the room or Alice before. At least I had no memory of having seen them since I started having lucid dreams. But my lucid dreams were an after effect of overcoming an earlier problem I'd once had. Because I try not to remember that time, I could say that with certainty that I'd never seen them before. It was possible that Alice in that room had both appeared in my dreams of Maya a long time ago.
それよりも今興味深いのは、さきちゃんとトールが同じ夢を見ていたってことよね。
While it wasn't obvious, Club Prez smiled, clearly amused by this. Well, don't worry, Club Prez. You're probably going to be next on the chopping block, or however this visual novel will be formatted.
同じような夢を見ただけの偶然でしょ？夢は寝てる間に見る記憶の整理って言うじゃないですか。
Because of me, Saki was quite knowledgeable about dreams, so she quickly dismissed the notion, even though she experienced the shared dream firsthand.
まあね。 私もその辺は分かってるんだけど、それでももしもっていうのがあるじゃない。
Is it really?
ないとする証拠はない程度かしら。
Clubpress shrugged. Apparently, she had little intention of defending her crazy theory.
ただ夢の研究って実は思ったよりも全然進んでないのよ。それにトールみたいに見た夢のことを覚えている人なんてほとんどいないじゃない。
And even I might have dreams that I don't remember. There was no guarantee that I was remembering every dream I had when I slept, except for the fact that you always dream. He always dreams every time he goes to sleep, right? We have never seen an instance where he goes to sleep and he wakes up the next morning and we don't see a dream, right? Those are the dreams he wouldn't remember. Aside from the lucid dreams I'd had, there might also be dreams I'd completely forgotten.
そういうこと。で、世界中には60億人オーバー。それに犬も夢を見るとか言われてるし、動物まで含めればそれ以上。
Although, he could be having multiple dreams, and we are only seeing the one, right? So technically, he wouldn't be wrong if he, when he says he might be having dreams that he doesn't remember.
それだけの数、夢は毎晩見られているのに、みんなそれを覚えているわけじゃないし、わざわざ夢の確認なんて誰もしないじゃない。
At this point, Saki seemed to realize what Club Prez was getting at.
まさか弥生先輩はただ単に覚えていないだけで同じ夢を見ている人同士がいるかもしれないなんて言うんですか？
その通り。だってそれが全くなかったなんて証拠もどこにもなかったじゃない。
It was conjecture at best, but we had at least one case that proved it was possible. But this time there's evidence from Saki and me. Not only that, but I had lucid dreams, so I could have remembered my dreams better than most people.
そういうこと。これでそのアリスもどこかにいて夢のことを覚えてたらこの説の信憑性が高まるのにね。
Not that you can reach a conclusion based on circumstantial evidence like our anecdotal accounts. Club Press seemed to agree.
そうは言いますけど、あのアリスって女だって兄さんの理想が形になった夢の中の人じゃないんですか？
I thought that too, but just now she flat out told me that she wasn't. I still believed that she might be someone created by my mind as a counterforce to Maya.
当たり前でしょ？それが兄さんの夢である以上素直に認めるわけがないじゃない。
防衛意識だったらそりゃトールのことを守るために違うって言うわよね。その方がトールに都合がいいもの。
While I did consider that possibility, it was a shock hearing it come from the two of them.
で、そのアリスはトールにとってどうだった？苦手なタイプなの？
I thought a little. I definitely didn't dislike her. She was rather boisterous and sometimes a little too energetic, but I had a lot of people around me who weren't always the most upfront. Well, she definitely is my type out of the 5 at the moment. But maybe not, I don't know, for Toru. In that sense, I certainly didn't dislike how open she was.
ふむ。どうやらお気に入りと見たわ。
さっきも夢に出てきたって言うけど、一体夢の中で何をしてたのやら。
I didn't do anything. Besides, what would I do in a dream anyway? Besides, she was the one who showed me her panties first. I didn't ask for it. I didn't ask for it. It's not my fault that the first CG that shows her has her panties out.
それこそ夢みたいに気持ちがいいことなんじゃないの？
Club Prez was straight to the point and without her usual grin. Slightly appalled, Saki and I looked at her in silence. She just tilted her head.
だって最高のバーチャルでしょ。所詮夢なんだし。 私ならもうゲーム感覚で好き勝手するわよ。まさかしてないの？
Saki's frigid stare hurt. Far from meeting that stare, I blocked her gaze with the palm of my hand.
兄さん、
I think you and I are having a different set of values. I haven't done it that much.
やだ、聞いた？そんなにですってことは少しはしたのよね。
Dig in your own hole there. Shut up. I can't help it. I'm a guy too, you know. I can't control my dreams perfectly, and I haven't recently. And I'm getting by somehow.
へえ。
Club Prez was smiling right at me, while Saki gave me a cold gaze from the side. I couldn't say that I hadn't seen Saki or Club Prez in my dreams, but I was prepared to take the knowledge of what I had done and how far I'd gone with them to my grave. Well, you still can if you just don't continue with this topic of conversation.
次はそのアリスさんがお相手ですか。そうなの。へえ。
現実の相手をどうにかするだけじゃ物足りなくなって、ついに想像上の理想にまで。
Saki's icy attitude and Club Prez's crocodile tears made me want to cry. I think there's a misunderstanding.
ま、確かにトールの夢にしては乙女チックすぎる夢かしらとは思うわ。
Club Prez's fake tears stopped immediately as she said that. Saki had a sullen look.
だってトールが思い描く部屋にしては随分少女趣味というか女の子っぽいじゃない？深層心理とかまで行くと知らないけど。
そういえば、お茶会の準備が整ってる綺麗な赤とか黒のお部屋だったかしら。
Maya had been messing with Saki, so Saki didn't have a moment to take a good look at the room. It seemed she only vaguely remembered it. Yeah, it was more or less like that. And even though it was cute, it had surprisingly pragmatic furnishings. It definitely wasn't to my taste. The twisting vines, the nightmare roses, and the scent they gave off. With the exception of the smell of the forest from my trauma, everything else was stuff that made no sense in my dream.
その上、夢の中に出てきた女の子がアリスよ、アリス！どんなイメージよ！
Club Press pointed at me and guffawed.
確かに。夢だからって不思議の国のアリスをイメージするのは兄さんらしくないわね。
I know about Alice in Wonderland too, you know. I think I'd seen Alice in the blue dress in a cartoon or something. Yeah, the Disney movie. I had seen the more recent movie, the Tim Burton one, and I hadn't read the books either. I don't remember the author of the Alice in Wonderland books. But that was the extent of my knowledge. It didn't make enough of an impression that I'd connected Alice with my dreams.
その辺がトールの抑圧された趣味ってんじゃないって主張したいんなら、夢が混ざってるのを受け入れておいた方が都合がいいんじゃない？
Yeah, maybe, but it was certainly nicer to imagine that to be the case rather than my repressed desires had manifest in the form of a person in my dreams. But what if the dream sharing was just a product of my constant hesitation?
万が一、その夢の混戦っていうのがあり得たとして、なんでそんなことになったのかしら。
Huh?
だから兄さんと私だけならともかく、どうしてそのよく知らない女の夢が混ざってるの？
I'd been wondering about that too. I don't know either, but, Club Prez, if our dream sharing is real, then doesn't that just make things even stranger?
ええ、その通りよ。何？今更気づいたの？
The beautiful blonde in front of me popped the last lotus root of her chikuzeni into her mouth and munched away at it. Why are you saying stuff that just makes this situation even stranger?
だったら目の前に転がってる悩みの方を相談してよ。ほら、何か隠してることあるんでしょ？トールとサキちゃんだけの秘密とか。
No, I can't say it. I don't want to. I refuse.
じゃあ悩み事増やしちゃったってしょうがないじゃない。
That doesn't make any sense.
だってそっちの方が面白そうじゃない。興味本位と好奇心よ。私は殺されるまで猫でいるつもりよ。
With her teacup in hand, Club Press let out a belch, even though she hadn't eaten that much.
そんな猫、いつかきっと好奇心をこじらせて死ぬわ。
それも自分で選んだ結果よね。
She is a scientist through and through, if anything. If nothing else, I guess. Club Press smiled, as if to say she was fine with that. Seeing that smile made me want to object, even though it was a refreshing smile. Well, today ended with that incident.
どこが無事だったのか説明してもらえるかしら。
Saki gave me an icy stare as I stretched. It was after school and we were on our way home. Even though I was taller, I felt like I was being completely looked down upon, though I didn't feel any chills. People just made a big deal because I lost my balance when I dozed off. Then again, it would be hard to call being carried by Tetsuya to the infirmary to sleep while Club Press watched me a normal nap. I don't think any nap from you would be normal considering your fucking dreams. But the school already knew about my illness from the doctor I usually went to, and so things didn't escalate any more than that. Everything was normal, even though I had a feeling it wasn't.
調子が良くないなら先生のところに行ってきなさい。
She meant the doctor at the hospital I usually went to for my condition. Even if I did, they would just prescribe me sleeping pills.
行けばもらえるならどうして弥生先輩に分けてもらったりするのかしら。
I don't know what you're talking about. I've never gotten them from Yuyoi. Actually, since Takahara isn't here, why do you care? I didn't have a response. I don't want the school to have records of me going to the hospital. The circumstances being what they were, the hospital apparently had an obligation to report such things. It was one of the conditions when you signed up to attend my school. Though it wasn't information that would be made public, I still didn't like the notion of there being records of me going to the hospital at the school. Yeah, that would look bad on your resume. As much of a resume as someone who's basically narcoleptic would have. Well, no, maybe not narcolepsy, more insomnia? That would be more closer to his condition, considering he doesn't like going to sleep.
それじゃあ今日も泊まりに行くから。
Some guy walking nearby overheard Saki's words and looked surprised. She had most certainly caused a misunderstanding, but she didn't care. Hey, what are you going to do if you stay anyway? What are you going to do if you stay anyway?
一緒に寝ればいいじゃない。今度も兄さんが変な夢を見たら一緒にいてあげられそうだもの。
Is someone else going to hear what Saki said and misunderstand her? The passerby looked relieved as he heard I was her brother. Anyway, enough about him. Okay, thank God it was the same guy. I guess. I checked to make sure there was no one watching and made sure we couldn't be heard before I said, "You intend on sleeping in the same bed again? I might be able to hold back when I'm awake, but there's no guarantee I won't have a weird dream after I fall asleep." Well, Saki had the weird dream before. Who's to say she won't have the weird dream again?
別に兄さんが勝手に見る分にはどうぞ。もしも夢で会う私が私の場合は遠慮してほしいけど。
We had the same dream once already. There was the possibility that I would have an erotic dream and Saki might be involved in it. All I'm gonna say is, Saki was the one who had the almost erotic dream. Right? If I picked the bad ending option, it would have led into a hate scene with Saki and Toru, which means Toru wasn't the one who got the erotic dream.
夢の中で兄さん相手とはいえ 簡単に何かさせると思ってるの？
Yes. You may have a vague memory of what happened in your dream, but I remember everything. Maybe not me specifically, but Toru remembered everything that happened in the dream. And one of the things that happened was that one of the things that happened was that you wanted to get with Toru in that way. Saki giggled.
それとも兄さん、夢の中なら嫌がる相手に無理やりできるほど強気なのかしら。
He didn't need to force himself on you. You wanted it. Apparently, she didn't remember the most important part of the dream we'd had. I remembered pushing Saki down to the bed and felt terribly awkward.
それに気になるのよ。夢が混ざるのはどうでもいいとして、どうしてマイヤちゃんがまた兄さんのところに来たのか。それは私も人事じゃないでしょ？
That's true, but for Saki and only Saki, this couldn't be called someone else's problem.
夢の混戦。もしかしたらそばにいた方が起きやすいかもしれないし。
I wonder if distance has anything to do with it.
わからないけど、兄さんのそばにアリスなんて人は見つからなかったし。
Considering that I just finished playing a visual novel where in two of the routes, proximity between the main character and the respective heroine was the reason why they had shared quote-unquote dreams, I would be inclined to think it's the same thing here. But it being but instead of flashbacks like in Angelic Chaos, it's actual dreams here, as much as the dreams are actually dreams and has nothing to do with reality or anything. I still don't know if that's going to be a factor, right? I don't know if I'm inclined to imagine that these dreams are going to bleed into real life eventually, and you know, I don't have any evidence to prove that that will happen, but you know, I'm just thinking, how far will the game go in terms of what they will do with the dreams? Saki said matter-of-factly. Didn't find anyone. Wait, what do you mean didn't find anyone?
言ったままの意味よ。近くに住んでるかと思ったけど、そんなことなかったし。
You checked?
ええ。アリス。それに似た名前の人も、同じくらいの年の女も、あの建物には住んでないわ。
The apartment building did belong to Saki's family, so it was probably easy for her being the landlord to... Her being the landlord? Okay, sure. To check who was living there. When did you check that?
昼休み終わってすぐよ。不動産の部署に確認取っただけで、個人情報を調べたわけじゃないわ。
Was that really enough for her? I had a feeling that she would have tossed privacy laws into the wind if there had been an Alice. It's not good to do that.
わかった上でやってるのよ。
I was going to scold her a little more, but when I looked at her, she didn't at all look like she felt guilty.
いいじゃない。過保護な妹が兄さんが話してる女が誰なのか気になって探してみたってだけのことだもの。可愛い嫉妬じゃない。
I'm mad about the means, not the motive. I was sure she was aware of that too. But just because you're aware of what you're doing, it doesn't mean you can get away with it. So don't do things that don't do things like that for personal reasons anymore. Saki didn't answer. She would probably do something similar again if she found it necessary. Ed, go home today.
なんで？今私が兄さんを怒らせたからそう言ってるの？
No, this and that are different matters. Do you plan on intruding on a guy who collapsed from lack of sleep? Saki fell silent. Sometimes reason got through to her. I just wished it got through to her more often. But at this rate, it just looked like I was being mean. I reached out my hand and patted Saki on the head. Hey, part of why I'm tired is because you stayed the night, you know? And you showed me a dream like that. I almost said it out loud, but managed to stop myself. In the morning, when I woke up, Saki's pajamas were quite disheveled. Thankfully, I had plenty of opportunities to routinely temper my self-control and restraint. But it wasn't like I did it because I wanted to, so I couldn't casually accept Saki staying overnight at my place anymore. So go home. Don't come over. Just as I said that, her face, which had a mix of embarrassment and acceptance when I petted her head, suddenly turned cold and sharp.
そうですか。兄さんがそうはっきり言うなら、今日は帰ることにするわ。
I think I'm always bluntly telling you to go home, but...
それじゃあ、今日は帰ってゆっくり寝てくださいね。また同じようなことがあれば、今度こそ首輪をつけてでもうちに連れて行きますから。
The fact that she was talking so formally was proof enough that she was mad. But if she was going to go home, then I was fine with that. Just then, Takahara's car arrived. I waved at Saki as she headed for it, but she turned the other way with a humph. Takahara seemed confused as to what had happened. She looked at me, since it was most likely me that made Saki angry, but there was no need for me to answer. I bowed my head slightly at her and headed home. I'm not actually sleepy though. The sleep my body wanted had almost been completely satisfied by the nap I took until lunch. I might have been able to get some rest from the tea party with Alice too. I was thankful for the opportunity to take a break from my lucid dreams. In the end, I told Saki not to come, mostly because I didn't want her lingering there to become the norm. I didn't want to think about what would happen in that case, and I didn't want her to do it because of that recent dream. I'd started to be more aware Saki's a girl. You could say that dream meant that Saki wouldn't really mind if I had made a move on her. There's no other way to interpret it. I hadn't wanted to notice, and Saki probably didn't have any intention of saying anything about it at this point. But having been shown something like that, I didn't know what to do. I could tell that Saki was trying to live normally without worrying about it. I seriously doubted that she had completely forgotten that dream, or forgotten only those convenient parts of that dream. I wanted to keep living normally too, but I didn't know when I might make a mistake. I wanted to do everything I could to avoid that mistake. After all, I sometimes found myself thinking it might be okay if I just charged forward and did whatever I wanted. Maybe, but just wait a bit more. Regardless as to whether this meant I was strong-willed or weak-willed, it was a pain. I thought this as I walked in front of the train station. Suddenly, I noticed a sound I normally didn't pay attention to. A street musician. I'd sometimes heard foreigners playing ethnic music in front of the station, but today, a girl from my school was the one singing. Aha. She was a student from the annex building, as opposed to the main building. Her guitar looked quite large compared to her small figure. Normally, I would have passed by without paying much attention to who was singing, but today, for some reason, I stopped. She was cute, but that wasn't why I stopped. Her voice was quiet and refreshing. It wasn't like she was incredibly good or anything. And it wasn't like I fell for her voice, or felt like it was destiny, or anything cheesy like that. felt like I couldn't move from the spot. I couldn't tell what it was that caught my interest. But there I stood and listened until the song ended. When it ended, I was the only one standing there. It was dusk. We were in front of the station, and she was cute. There wasn't anything else that caught my attention. She wasn't particularly good at playing the guitar, and I couldn't think of anything that was really worth stopping for, which was probably an arrogant thought on my part. And yet I stopped. Huh?
どうしました?
There she is, the green text. We have finally met the fifth girl. Perhaps it was because I was the only one there. She responded to me talking to myself. It's just, don't you have a case for people to put money in? Or is it normal to put offerings into an open guitar case or something?
別にいいんです。こんな時間じゃろくにもらえませんし。
I guess so, but wouldn't the reason why you're doing this in front of the train station at this time because of the increase in foot traffic from people going home? Where am I supposed to put this 100 yen then?
いただけるならもらいます。
The girl held out her hand. I handed her the 100 yen I'd taken out of my pocket.
ありがとうございます。
She bowed her head slightly. Well, it's not much, but is that okay?
大丈夫って何がですか?
We're close to the school, but you're still in your uniform. This was the path students used if they needed to take the train to and from campus. Wearing a Suikyo uniform and singing on the street made her stand out.
バイトや演奏活動が校則で禁止されてるわけじゃありませんから。
That's true, but it's not like I had all the school rules memorized. I had a part-time job to help ease my living expenses too, and I sometimes took on another job on top of that. I knew that wasn't forbidden for me, but I couldn't remember if that was the case for the annex building.
それに、問題があるなら指導すればいいじゃないですか。
Was it my imagination, or did she look like she wanted me to chide her? Next thing I knew, she had a cynical smile.
ここで制服で歌っていて問題があるなら、生活指導でも何でもすればいいって言ったんです。こっちは何も隠してないんだから。気づいてないなら生活指導も役に立っていませんよね。
Don't you think they're letting you off the hook out of goodwill, or because you aren't doing anything bad?
さあ、妥協とか保身なら考えられますけど。
Self-preservation. Even if there was a problem with your behavior, letting you off the hook as a compromise or laziness would be one thing, but isn't self-preservation a little strange? I'm glad he pointed that out too.
おかしくありません。私、理事長の命ですから。
Okay, I guess it makes sense now. The girl said with a sigh, as though that were a burden. I mean, she's definitely acting like it is. Come to think of it, I think I've heard of you. Yeah, me too. Just not from the school. I remember Tetsuya saying something about the school president's niece being in Annex 3rd year. He said she was cute, but didn't really get along with people, and that made her irresistible. He promptly received a low kick from Asahi, but afterwards they were happily flirting again. Keiko?
平坂です。稽古は下の名前ですけど。何ですかその慣れ慣れしい呼び方は。
Because that's what was in the menu, okay? I didn't know your last name, and even if I did, I'm still going to use your first, as I do with every other character. Oh, I just heard my friend calling you that. I offered that as my justification to Hirosaka, who had taken an obvious step back.
そんな呼び方されてるなんて初めて聞きました。
Well, he's like that to everyone. If you hadn't heard anyone else call you that, then you probably aren't being called that. About the school president's niece, huh? I could see how it would be hard for even a teacher to reprimand her.
まあいいです。それで先輩ですよね。
Oh, yeah, I am. Naito. Second year, just so you know. I'm not trying to hit on you or anything.
ナイト？ああ、
Wait, what? What do you mean? What did you hesitate for?
シスコンでお金持ちの家に引き取られた妹に、いいように尻に敷かれているあの内藤先輩ですね。
Is that what the rumor is in the annex building? I thought it would have to do with his collapsing and shit. So are those the rumors going around in the annex building?
ええ、くだらない噂ですね。ほんとどうでもいいことですけど。
Yeah, they're almost completely false. Anyway, I got the feeling obsessed with my sister and henpecked were pretty accurate, but it wasn't like she was really my sister.
訂正しないんですか？
Too much trouble. They're just rumors. You don't seem like the type to be interested in them anyway. If the rumors went too far, then I might be killed by Takahara. But she was an adult, so she was capable of distinguishing between rumors and truth. I hope. Hirosaka was looking at me with an expression that was hard to describe. Was she amused? I guess I don't want to impose too long.
いえ、別に。どうせ誰も聞いていませんし。
It was true that I had been the only one who stopped and listened, and no one was complaining that the singing had stopped. So you say, but I rather liked it. Others who think that who think that way might start gathering around eventually.
別に、そういうの望んでませんから。
She didn't sound like she was trying to act tough.
誰も気にしていなくて。けど私は好きに歌います。それでいいじゃないですか。
Hirosaka really looked like she was fine with that. She didn't seem to seek attention, nor did she seem upset that she wasn't getting any. She just accepted it. Even though I was listening.
そういう人もたまにいます。
I sighed softly at that reply. I see. But at least lose the uniform. Even if no one reprimands you for it, you might attract some undesirable attention.
先輩みたいな人ですか？
Sure. Worse than me. People who have ulterior motives because of their looks. Your looks, rather than to hear you sing. A young girl in uniform singing. There were people who liked that sort of thing, and others might just try to hit on her. Either one would be troublesome for one girl to deal with alone. Hirosaka gave me an annoyed look.
わざわざそんなことを言うなんて。先輩はおせっかいですね。
He's being honest. So I've heard. I don't think I am, though.
トールはおせっかいね。周りのこと気にしすぎ。ハゲるわよ、ハゲ。
Yeah, but that's your saying it. It doesn't count. Club Prez had said that too. Honestly, the people around me were all a little too honest. Like you. See you around. Buy some tea or something with that 100 yen I gave you. Just as I was about to leave.
100円じゃ買えませんけどね。
True. I don't think Hirosaka meant anything by it, but now it looked bad. I walked back to Hirosaka and dropped another 100 yen coin in her hand.
そういうつもりで言ったんじゃないんですけど。
Just take it. She may not have been asking for it, but I wouldn't be satisfied unless I gave it to her.
先輩は甘いんですね。
She sighed, looking exasperated. And here I thought I was meddlesome. Well, take care of yourself.
そうですね。ありがとうございました。
Hirosaka bowed her head slightly. This time I really did walk away. Behind me, I heard her start singing again, but again, no one was stopping. It was a voice that was just outside the edge of my awareness, like the voices of other people talking or the ambient music playing in the store. It was just music that was there, that you didn't pay any particular attention to. And Hirosaka said, so unenthusiastically, that it was fine. Is she really fine with it, just that? I looked back at her. I shouldn't stick my nose in any further, I thought, appalled at my own meddlesomeness. I dreamed again today. Well, now that we have seen the fifth girl, it is time. Unfortunately, I already technically have a ranking, but you can blame Dexter for that one because I didn't want to do a ranking until after I met Keiko. But Dexter really wanted to know where the first four girls were in my ranking. Now here's the thing. Alice and Saki aren't changing. I'm conflicted about if Keiko is better or worse than Yayoi. Because I do like Yayoi, and I might like Keiko more if we get to know her more. But then again, it's not like the ranking is set in stone. So, may as well just have her at fourth, right? Currently, she's at fourth. Which means, unfortunately, Maya is at fifth now. Oops, unlucky. But, yeah. Okay. That's the current ranking, I guess. And that was technically the first time you've seen that rankings. If you've only been watching me play Hapymaher and haven't watched any of my streams. It had become completely commonplace for me to come to this room when I dreamed. I'm alone today, huh? Oh, that's surprising. In that case, it was the same as it used to be, only I happened to be in this room. I passed by the sweets on the table and sat down on the large sofa before flopping onto my side. The sofa was so incredibly comfortable as usual that I felt like I was about to fall asleep, even though this was a dream. But not for long. There's a window in the ceiling too, I thought. Just then, that window opened and something fell through it. I didn't know what those flesh-colored things were at first, but I soon realized those were legs. And not just legs, there was also a body attached. Okay, so surely it can't be Alice or Maya, right? Because those two would usually just walk in through the door. So it has to be someone else, right? But then, who? And why now? Actually, it was Alice. Oh, okay. He just thought, you know, it was too boring if she just entered in entered into the room through normal means. She just wanted to come in with style. I like how the text box went to the top of the screen. She didn't seem to realize or think that anyone was below her, nor that her skirt had been pulled up from entering feet first. She dropped down. Hey, wait a sec. I sat up, but my feet were on the armrest, so I couldn't move, and I couldn't move right away. Alice fell on top of me. If it was going to be anyone, I'm glad it was Alice. And it's solely because she's at the top of my list. So, which part of her is covering my vision at the moment? I was so flabbergasted that I forgot to turn off the auto. Not my you know, his face isn't obscured, but I shouldn't be surprised because, you know, this was the first CG we saw of Alice did show her panties, right? And the opening of the game showed her panties off a lot too. So maybe this is going to become the norm, where every CG with Alice in it is going to show off her panties. But you know, this is what I was talking about before, where I didn't do it for Alice's first CG, but for every CG of her panties going forward, I will increase the opacity to make it easier for me to censor them for the YouTube. Because she fell at a strange angle, she'd landed on me butt first. Also, I did go back to the last line because the backlog isn't as opaque as the text box is at the moment. Oops. Her legs were both facing me, and as she fell back, one of her legs got caught on the back of the sofa. Naturally, her skirt was no longer fulfilling its intended purpose. If you're asking whether I'm okay or not, I'm just barely okay, but it was a little painful, but maybe because this was a dream and how I imagined I'd caught her, how I had imagined I'd catch her, the result was somewhat comical. Are you okay? With this situation, I mean. You know, unlike the last time where Alice's text box was over the panties, so it was harder for me to. It would have been harder for me to censor. I feel like that's not going to be the case this time, but just in case, right? It's a just in case thing. Because we know Toru's text box isn't going to change from where it will be, which is always at the bottom of the screen. But we just saw with Alice's text box that it went to the top. So who knows? Don't move around on me. It's fine. It's fine, Alice. I censored them. No one's gonna see them. Alice tried to get down, but because of the position she was in, she couldn't move very well and flailed wildly. The sensation of having her roll around on me was both soft and suffocating. Get off already! I felt the slightest, honestly, I did slightly, I felt the slightest, honestly, I did slightest bit of regret, but I grabbed her and rolled her off of me. A short but sweet scene, I guess. I calmed the struggling Alice down and let out a sigh. See, another thing I like about this game is that, unlike other visual novels, where the text box opacity is more fucking, there's more freedom, I guess, with how opaque or transparent you can make the text box. But for someone like me who is going to constantly be changing it from completely opaque to the default transparency, I like that there are notches, right? Instead of, giving me all of that freedom.
何それ。私の顔を見てため息をつかないでほしいんだけど。
I'm not doing. I know. I changed the opacity of the text box to censor the first CG of the second CG of Alice. I guess this is the first one technically, but I'm not going to do it here. Don't ask why. It just happened that way. Red in the face, she looked at me warily, but if she was so wary, what was with the position of her legs? It's... What? It's not you that I have a problem with, it's this dream. At present, I was visiting this room just as I had expected I would. That was the norm now. I was in my apartment when I woke up, and in this room when I went to sleep. It was almost like this was another reality. When I had thought that, another sigh escaped my lips. Alice didn't seem to like my attitude. She glared at me with narrowed eyes as she held her tea with both hands. Do you not have a problem with being called here every single night?
文句っていうか、私こっち側のことしか知らないから何とも言えないし。
Also, if Alice's problem with the second CG is that Toru had full access to her panties, right? He had full view of her panties. Why does he just let him freely... Why does she let him freely see them for the first CG, right?
トールこそ逆に毎日目が覚めたら自分の部屋のベッドの上だったことに文句なんてないでしょ?
Because, like... Surely, the developers constantly showing that CG means that is Alice's normal seating position. Right? That's true. Come to think of it, Alice didn't have any memories of when she was awake.
一人でブラブラしてるよりも、トールたちがいる分だけ今の方が好きかな。ここに来れば美味しいお茶やお菓子もたくさんあるし、それにここが私にとっては夢っていうより現実だもの。別に起きてる時のことは覚えてないし。
That's no fun. If she only remembered being here, if she didn't feel worried or afraid, or inconvenienced from that, then that was fine. If the same thing happened to me, well, if that happened, I'd probably be fine with that too. Because I wouldn't even remember what I was worried about. Oh. Yeah, what? I wouldn't even remember what I was worried about it. Okay, yep. It's nice being in the habit of dreams, isn't it? No school, no test.
なんかの歌みたい。だけど、学校は行ってみたいかな。
I was relieved to see Alice change topic so easily. She must have decided to forget about what we were just talking about. I flipped down on the sofa again.
うわー、だらけてるね。さっき昼寝もしたっていうのに。それとも、もしかして、
I'm not hurt or anything from you falling on me. It's just, how can I be motivated in a place like this? And this room, which had a delicious, sweet smell, had a strange color scheme. And to me, this was a place where a nightmare I had been averting my eyes from appeared. How could I keep smiling after being invited to a place like that? And on top of that, I couldn't escape, so it was easier to just give up and wait rather than be on my guard. Hey, Alice, can I ask you something?
何? ちょっと待って、エッチなことはなし。ノーセンキューで。
I already get enough of your I already get enough of a view of your panties to not think about anything dirty when it comes to you. Why would you think I'd ask that?
だって、さきちゃん相手に我慢して、なんかこう、 男の子のハートとか余裕がギリギリなんじゃないかなと。さっきもなんかね。
I get that you're putting things in a weird way because you're embarrassed, but I wouldn't do something like that without consent.
そうだね。
What are you trying to say?
なんでもないよ、なんでも。さきちゃんはいいって言ってたよなとか思って。んや
With both hands, I smushed Alice's cheeks with them, cheeks, and then pulled on them. I didn't consent to that. Is there anything else you want to say?
セクハラ反対です。
What part of this was sexual harassment? I let her go, but if she was going to worry about that, then I wanted her to rethink how she was sitting. Okay, see? Even Toru pointed out that the first CG is Alice's usual sitting position. Not thinking about that at all with both hands, Alice rubbed her cheeks that I had just pulled on.
で、トールは私に何を聞きたいの？
Alice asked, seemingly paying little to no heed to our previous bit of nonsense. Oh yeah, I was just wondering if maybe I'm too meddlesome. I suddenly started thinking about what happened between me and Hirosaka. There was nothing wrong about singing in the street, but something about her words, about it being fine if no one listened to her, weighed on my mind. But if I wondered if I was just being meddlesome or worrying about that.
トールはおせっかいだと思う。
Shit. That's 4 for 4. Alice didn't even hesitate. I was so shocked that I involuntarily let out an eh. Well, I don't know if Saki calls him meddlesome, but it's not like she hasn't said he isn't. So technically, 3 for 3. In response, Alice let out an eh too. It looked at me with a surprised expression.
まさかと思うけど、自覚なかったの？
It's not that. It's just that I'm shocked that someone I just met would tell me that. I was, to some degree, self-aware, but still.
いや、おせっかいっていうのもちょっと違うかな。
Really? Don't tell me it's something worse. It was kind of pathetic that I felt so relieved after hearing her change of heart.
うん。おせっかいっていうか、なんだろう。厄介事を抱え込みそうなタイプというか、それを無責任に放り投げられないタイプというか、苦労人気質？考えすぎてドツボにはまるんだけど、考えない生き方もできないからどうしようもないっていう。
That's enough. Please, you don't have to say it. Was she really a kind of personality born from my mind? I wanted to cry so much that I couldn't help but think that.
ほら、もうちょっと気楽にしてみたら？やりたいようにやってみたりさ。
But self-restraint is important, isn't it?
だからそれがダメなんだって。それができないから抱え込みっぱなしになるんだよ。
I think the right way to describe Toru would be a prude? I don't know if that's the right word. Even so, there was a time for self-restraint. At least when it came to Saki, I felt that was extremely important. Like, does bro have a single hobby? You know, I understand that that's not what the point of this visual novel is, but what does Toru do outside of school and sleep, right? Yeah, but frankly, right now I was using a lot of self-restraint, just trying to figure out how to deal with Alice. I wasn't dried up enough to think nothing of having a defenseless girl near me with no one around to see, but this was a dream. when I thought that she was probably part of my mind. I felt reluctant, but I was already familiar with what it felt like to want to die from self-loathing afterwards.
ちょっと待って。我慢は大事だけど理性も大事。わかるよね。もう一度言うと、エッチなのはノーサンキューで。
Did you just come here to jerk me around? Maybe I should just push her down after all. Maybe I should just push her down after all. Jesus Christ. I thought as I sat back down on the sofa. Just then, the doors opened with a creak. Oh.
あら、ここは。
Well, this is a surprise. I mean, it's not like... Hang on a minute. Okay. Surely, Saki isn't in his room right now, sleeping next to Toru, right? Surely, Saki is just coincidentally dreaming about this room again. And it has nothing to do with the proximity of Saki to Toru. Is that the right way to put it? Saki? And she's in her dream outfit, or whatever you'd call it. Her fucking white rabbit outfit. Seeing me, Saki took a step towards me. Behind her, the doors closed by themselves.
こんばんは、兄さん。ずいぶん楽しんでるみたいね。
Now, whether or not this is like a dream version of Saki, right, in the same way that Maya is, you know, she's technically sleeping, but she's not there isn't an alternate version of her that's, that can wake up. Or if this is just the actual Saki, lucid dreaming, I would maybe. The way she was smiling sent a chill down my spine. I don't look tired.
ええ。そちらのアリスさんとずいぶん楽しそうにしてたみたいですけど、何をしようとしていたのかしら？
I'm not so much thinking that this version of Saki is like a part of Toru's imagination, right? I don't think that's what this is, right? I think it is a Saki, and whether or not it's a more detached version of Saki or the real Saki is, I guess it would be dependent on if Saki remembers having this dream or not. Saki gave me an annoyed, icy stare. Where had she been watching from? Where had she been watching from? Hey, wait. More importantly, Saki, why are you here?
どうしてと言われても、勝手にここに来たとしか。
You didn't sneak into my apartment after I fell asleep, did you?
あら、してほしいの？していいの？
He would say yes, but for the sake of his life, he has to say no. It's okay if you don't. Please don't. If she felt like it, Saki could easily use her duplicate key to invade my apartment in the middle of the night. Saki smiled faintly, so I thought that was what she had done tonight, but...
ご期待に添えなくて悪いけれど、今日は兄さんの部屋には行ってないわ。
I felt a wave of relief at those words. Alice watched us from a distance. Why did you sit so far away?
いや、兄弟の楽しい時間を邪魔するのも悪いと思って。
If that's what this looks like, then I recommend a doctor. Counseling is pretty effective after all.
兄さんには役に立たなかったけどね。
You know, maybe a dream doctor though, because you won't remember going to an actual doctor when you're awake. Saki nonchalantly sat down on the sofa, I'd been using and looked up at me. It was a little embarrassing, but I couldn't very well run away, so I sat down next to her. I guess we can have the same dream, even if we're as far apart as Saki's house is from my place.
そうだね。多分だけど、私もトールのすぐ近くにはいないと思うし。
Alice was one thing, but had Saki accepted the dream situation we were in?
まあいいや。はい、さきちゃん紅茶。ミルクと砂糖はその辺にあるから。
ありがとうございます。
Saki took the tea Alice offered and drank it quietly. The room was silent. Saki looked around as I pondered whether this was the real Saki. Well, that's what I'm asking. And Alice watched us as we did, so...
ねえ兄さん、きちんと覚えてないんだけど、私の見たあの夢は結局何だったのかしら。
You know, Saki being like a fake version of herself that manifested through, I guess, Toru's subconscious desire is a lot more plausible than whatever the fuck Alice is. Right? If Toru's dreams only consisted of people who he's met before, right? And all of those and every version of those people are just like a dream version of them, right? And not the actual person, or in the same way of Alice, a completely different person. How would I say? I guess it would be a lot easier to explain why these people are in Toru's dreams, right? Saki murmured suddenly. Dreams are just dreams in the end, aren't they? But I remembered Maya saying that was the dream Saki wished for. That was all Maya had said, so I didn't know if it was true or not. Even if she did wish for it, it might have simply been a what if that occurred as a result of how much time she spent with me.
あら、兄さん、そんな意味で言ったんじゃないのに。もしかして、何か隠したいことでもあるの？
Wait, where did that come from?
なんだか、この話はしたくないから、適当に切り上げたいのかと思って。
It was true that I didn't want to go into much detail.
それに、どうやって終わったかもよく覚えてないのよね。兄さんなら知ってるんじゃないかしら。
Of course I knew, but did she actually want me to say it? I looked at Saki. She didn't look worried. Instead, she was grinning at me. Maybe she was lying about not remembering.
ちょっと待って。そんな意味じゃないって言ったけど、だったらどういう意味のこと？
I was relieved that Alice came to my rescue. Saki stopped messing around with me and returned to the topic at hand.
忘れている夢が幸せな夢だったっていうのはわかるのよ。あと、兄さんが目を覚まさせてくれたっていうのも。だからもし、兄さんたちが起こしてくれなかったら、私はどうなっていたのかしらって思ったの。
きっと、さきちゃんは夢から目覚めなかったでしょうね。
Alice answered without hesitation. It was as if that was common sense to her. Alice, let's say hypothetically that Saki's wish did come true. Would that cause the dream to end? When that desire was fulfilled, wouldn't the dream end since this was the goal?
叶ったところで綺麗に終われば、それは終わるかも。だけど、例えばお金持ちになりたいって願った後、そのお金を使わないかな。使いたいでしょ？
Dreams were kind, especially if it was a dream filled with your wishes.
幸せな世界は終わらない。だって、人はみんないつまでも幸せでいたいはずだもの。
That's True. The nightmares that I had. If that desire was fulfilled, I knew that I knew what would happen. And since I was a part of this dream, there was a strong possibility for that never-ending dream to occur.
そう。この夢は、やっぱり終わらないかもしれないのね。
On the other hand, if the dream does end cleanly, or whatever, then they'll wake up, right? They say all dreams end, but those were the words of someone who was able to wake up. If you were trapped in a dream, and it ended there, you wouldn't be able to say that to anyone.
なんか二人ともずいぶん納得早いけど、もしかして覚めない夢に心当たりがある？
I've read Junji Ito's manga on the, on the guy that kept dreaming for longer and longer periods of time. All right, I know all of this.
トールはなんか経験があるとか言ってた気がするんだけど。
I know all about never-ending dreams. I also watched Inception. They're not, even though both of those are about dreams, they kind of aren't very related to each other, but I have never experienced sharing a dream with someone before, though. I also knew that even if the dreamer didn't wake up and gave up on reality, that didn't necessarily mean they'd never be able to get out of it. Then again, once you had been captured by a dream, there was no guarantee that things would ever be the same, neither the dreams nor reality.
なんでアリスさんはいろいろ詳しく知ってるんですか？
Well, she is meant to be Alice in Wonderland, right?
ほら、夢ってさ、こういうことになってるって理不尽だけど当たり前に受け入れられることあるじゃない。そういうのだと思う。
Well, it is a dream. But I knew about not being able to escape from a dream from experience, not something vague like that. And despite the fact that I could tell it was a dream, it wouldn't end no matter how much I distorted it and tried to destroy it. The dreamer had to put an end to things, and only then could we do something about the flower that was the source of the nightmare. What a pain. As I was thinking that, Saki looked at me as though she wanted to say something. What's wrong?
私の悪い夢は終わったとしたら、次はもしかして兄さんの番なんじゃないかなと思って。
Well, that's certainly possible. You're thinking too simple, Saki. It can't just have... You can't just have two dream episodes. How would I put that? You can't have just Saki's dream and Toru's dream being solved, right? You have to have more characters like Yayoi and Keiko and maybe Alice and Maya, but I don't know. And then after all of those characters, maybe you can tackle Toru's dream. Saki knew what my bad dream would be.
私か。それともサキちゃんの二度目がない保証もないけどね。
Alice put her teacup down with a clatter.
自分がどんな夢を見るか心当たりある？
Yes, but I'm not telling you. Though she noticeably pouted, I doubt Alice assumed that even I would tell her so easily. Saki knows. If something happens to her, ask her. I won't care if she tells you then. Besides, my nightmare was simple. If Alice got involved, she would probably figure out what it was right away. Judging by the troubled look on Saki's face, she must have known too.
私が見た夢くらいのことで済めばいいわね。
Still, I wouldn't want anyone to see my dream.
何よ、サキちゃんにあんな。
It sounded like Alice was going to say something bad, so I hastily threw a scone into her mouth.
ねえ兄さん、結局最後私はどんな夢を見ていたの？
Do you really want to know? Because it's going to be pretty fucking embarrassing when he tells you. I'll tell you eventually. I don't want to say it now. Even when I evaded Saki like this, she looked at me with cold eyes, but that was pretty much Saki's equivalent of puffing out her cheeks. So it was scarily. It wasn't scary at all. Although I didn't have much confidence when it came to someone stopping me or waking me up, it would be good if things ended with a dream like Saki's. If Maya targeted me, and if I were dragged into the sort of dream that Saki and I were imagining. I didn't want to say that I definitely wouldn't win, or that I wouldn't be able to wake up from the dream. My reality was in the world I woke up to. I had no intention of getting caught in the world of dreams as a second time. But if I was swallowed by the dream and didn't wake up, then would the two girls here get dragged into it as well? I didn't know much about Alice, but that was because she didn't have much to do with me, and I had caused Saki tons of trouble until now. I couldn't get either of them involved. For that reason, I had to settle things with Maya on my own, even if it meant destroying the dream. That way, if I rejected the dream, there would be no problems, and if I failed, then the only one who would be dragged back in was me.
兄さん、またろくでもないことを考えてるみたいだけど。
もしかして怒ってる？いや、男の子だし、エッチな夢を見るくらいは仕方ないと思うから気にしなくてもいいわよ。
No, I was just daydreaming.
強がっちゃって。素直に二人に助けてって言えばいいじゃない。
Shit. I mean, it's not like I wasn't expecting her to show up eventually, but, you know, the room's feeling a bit crowded now. The expression before I knew it couldn't be any more apt. Maya hugged me around the neck from behind. Shit. I suddenly smelled honey and forest. Perhaps it was because I was trying not to recall these painful memories. My mind went blank for a moment. My vision went white, and I lost all sensation, like you do right before you feel lightheaded.
Maya-chan!
Saki's voice brought me back to my senses.
Saki-chan も夢の中にいらっしゃい。紅茶の味はいかがかしら。お菓子も遠慮しないで好きに食べていいのよ。
Maya stepped away from me and onto the table. She walked across it to the opposite side. The teapots and confectionery plates rattled, but Maya didn't step on anything. That goddamn fucking smile. She took a seat on the other side of the table and sloppily poured herself a cup, as though she were in a cartoon, and began to drink.
君がここにいるってことは、もしかして今日もまた何かするつもり？
Alice began to speak in a weary manner, completely different from when she'd been talking to us. Saki hardly moved, but she held one of my sleeves tightly.
そうよ、夢のお話にご招待。さて、今夜はどんな夢になるかしら。
So, you mean you're going to invite someone new, right? So then, who is it going to be? Because we have already met the other two girls, right? We already met the last girl. So it can only be between Yayoi and Keiko, right? If Maya said this line before we met Keiko, then the dream would be Yayoi's, I guess. Right?
だけど、残念。まだ準備が整ってないの。もう少し待っていてもらえるかしら。
I mean, the thing is, I don't think Maya knows either Yayoi or Keiko, right? If it's not ready, then why are you out here drinking tea?
だっ 楽しそうなんですもの。私だけのけ者なんて寂しいじゃない？
Even though she sat on the other side of the table, those words felt like they had been whispered into my ear. When I turned around, she was already somewhere else.
別に望んでなんてないし、準備もしなくていいのに。本当にいいのかしら。それで後悔しない？
Maya grinned at Alice.
どういう意味よ。わからない？私がしているのは夢の案内だけ。あなたたちみたいに好きに書き換えたりなんてできないの。私にできるのは夢の望む形を表に出すだけなの。脚本を書き換えるような真似は無理だわ。
Alice and I could interpret the script, but Maya could only perform according to the script. Alice and I could interpret that script, but Maya could only perform according to the script. Right. I don't know how much of that was true, though. Maya, what do you mean by you won't regret it? I've been through this before, so I wasn't going to embarrass myself like last time. I was calmer than I thought I'd be. Of course, I couldn't be my usual self completely, and I felt like I was just barely getting by somehow.
私は幸せな夢にその人をご招待するわ。別に止めないならそれでもいいんだけど。
Maya looked at me and giggled. In other words, if we don't butt in, then they can stay happy.
さあ、本人が幸せな夢なんていらないって目を覚ますのは止めないし、何よりさっきも言ったけど止められないし、それに手を出しても夢から目を覚ましたくないって言うかもしれないじゃない。
Maya said this with a giggle. I thought maybe she was responding to what I had been thinking earlier, but suddenly, I heard a footstep from the other side of the doors. Alice seemed to hear it too, and she gave me a look.
やっと来たのね。
Okay, who's it gonna be? When Maya said this, the doors opened with a creak.
あら？トールとサキちゃん？
Okay, well... That means Keiko was the last one, I guess. Club Prez. Oh! Now here's the thing. I thought the reason why Saki was suddenly in her outfit was because, you know, she was... How would I say this? She changed into it after going through that dream, right? Because the first time she came in here, she was in the school outfit. Or her pajamas? I don't really remember, but she wasn't in her white bunny outfit, right? Apparently that isn't the case here. Because, holy... Yoyoi's just in her outfit from the start. As we looked at Club Prez in bewilderment, she stepped into the room. Oh crap. Before I could even think that, the doors had closed behind her. If I had pushed her back in before she entered the room, then maybe she wouldn't have gotten involved in this dream.
この人、トールたちの知り合い？ええ。二人の頼りになる先輩ってとこかしら。
Club Press said as she put her hand to her chest proudly. I'm not going to pretend to be prim and proper, even though you've never met her. Well, you're not going to be prim and proper. Maya smiled as she sat in her chair. I didn't want to lower my guard in front of her, not after what she did to Saki.
寝てる間くらいいいじゃない。どうせ夢なんでしょこれ。確かに不思議ね。
Club Prez's heels clicked as she walked around the room.
これが夢だって分かってるのに目が覚めないなんて。なるほど。ルシッドドリームってこんな感じなのかしら。
She leaned out of the window and admired the mishmash of colors of the forest outside. I was already familiar with what it was like out there, so my eyes went to Club Prez instead. Yeah, the rabbit aesthetic is a lot more pronounced in Yoyoi's outfit. Also, I'm gonna have to censor that one on the right. There's a lot of skin showing there, and it's a bit much compared to the front. Shall I say? Everything below her waist was sticking out towards me, and every time she moved, her butt would sway side to side. She even had a tail. The side of the Club Prez and tied in with her almost bare butt sticking out in tights. And her almost bare butt sticking out made Alice let out a wah in astonishment.
兄さん、あれ、どう見てもウサギよね。
Yes, but you're also a rabbit, right? If we're going down this Alice in Wonderland motif, there are technically 2 rabbits in Alice in Wonderland, right? I mean, one of them's a hare, so technically there's only 1 rabbit, but you know, she's got the ears and everything, so I'd say yes.
耳？ん？なにこれ？なによこの格好。
That's what I should be asking. Club Prez reached up and felt the rabbit ears on her head. I didn't know if they were real or not, but it wasn't something simple like a headband. It was like they were growing directly out of her head. Her outfit consisted of a low-cut, almost tailcoat-like outer garment, and something that resembled a bikini bottom, complete with what looked like a tail. Was this supposed to be a bunny suit? Alice took a hand mirror out of her pocket and handed it to Club Prez, who peered into it.
やだ。かっこいい。
A bit, and also a bit, risque.
兄さん、何か言ってあげないと。
It's not cool. It's sexy. Definitely sexy.
わざわざ2度言わなくてもいいんじゃないかな。というか、なんでトールは格好が普段と変わってないの？この調子なら、イカレ帽子屋とかになってると思ったのに。
See, I'm not the only one to point it out. I'm surprised Yayoi picked up on it so quickly, but, you know... Mad... Huh? What is she talking about?
ああ、気づいてないならいいわ。なるほど、そうなのね。
Don't worry, I noticed, okay? Maybe, you know, Toru, even though he did point out the link between Alice in this game and, you know, Alice in Wonderland, he hasn't really put 2 and 2 together for the other characters. In this short span of time, Club Prez seemed to have realized something, but it didn't look like she was going to tell us.
それよりも、さっきからトールにくっついてるその子、どちら様かしら？
I looked back and saw Maya clinging to my back as she floated in the air.
それはまだ教えたくないみたいだから黙っておくわ。ね。
Maya was hugging me quite tightly.
トールってば相変わらず年下が好きなのね。
Now, if the first problem is that I'm trying to remember all of the characters, or I guess the notable characters, and I'm drawing a blank on what Keiko could be. Right, I was already, shall I say, confused on whether or not Saki and Yayoi both represented rabbits in Alice in Wonderland, right? But with Keiko, I have no idea.
ああ、だからサキちゃんとか。
If you just blindly accept the situation like that, then there's going to be a misunderstanding. Saki dug her nails into my waist as though she had a complaint in her to voice. More importantly, Maya, why is Club Prez here? The number of people I couldn't get involved had increased. I couldn't help but be a little angry. I tore Maya off me and asked her.
さあ、それならサキちゃんだってどうしてここにいるのかしらね。
I don't know. It's your dream, I think.
それはトールの関係者だから？
In that case, why are you here, Alice? Why hadn't Maya brought up Alice just now? Was it because Alice had been here since the beginning? Something wasn't adding up.
とよくわかんないけど、そっちのアリスちゃんもトールの毒牙にかかったってことでいいのかしら。
By that logic, I must have made a move on you too, Club Prez.
ひどい！放課後の準備室で私にあんなことまでしておいてとぼける気なの？
Not in front of Saki. Alright, you can make those jokes when Saki isn't here, but when she is here, refrain from doing that. Saki dug her nails into my hand again. Saki, she's obviously joking. I mean, I've never done anything to you, right?
そういえばそうだったわね。
That's not a very good defense.
ほんとひどいわよね。
Maya sounded like she was referring to Saki's dream from before.
で、トールはなんでこんな楽しそうな夢見てんのにあんな嫌そうな顔してたのよ。まさか毎晩特会引っかえ朝までハーレムめいたことしてたのが疲れたとか言わないわよね。
I won't. Maya, does Club Press being here mean that? Maya was grinning at me as I realized what her plan was. Even though I wanted to be wrong, Maya didn't stop smiling.
ええ、今日の舞台はお姉さんの夢よ。だけどなんてお呼びすればいいのかしら。ルートウィッチお姉様？
Now, speaking of Yayoi, right, or I guess Keiko in the same breath, I did bring up that when it comes to the, I guess, the scenes you get on the title screen if you idle on it for a long enough time, what I said was that I would do them at the end of episodes after we meet Keiko, right? And we've already done that, and I haven't done anything with the title screen stuff. The reason I need to clarify more. I'm not doing it when we meet Keiko. I'm doing it when we see, well, after we see her outfit, right? I don't know if that's a good way of me explaining, a good way of me to explain, but
マヤちゃんみたいな可愛い子にお姉様って呼ばれるのはゾクゾクするけど長いわね。
You know, just to make sure no one is confused as to why there won't be any of those title screen idle scenes. Even though we've already met Keiko, that's why. It's because I'm waiting until after we see her dream outfit or whatever these are called.
何かあだ名とかないのかしら。エリザベスさんをベスって呼んだりとかするみたいに。一応ルートウィッチはルーイになるんだけど、名前でいいわよ。弥生さ
なんかしっくりこないわね。
Certainly, Yayoi wasn't the kind of name that you'd expect from a blonde bunny girl.
それじゃあルーティ、今日の準備はできているかしら？
準備？何の？
あら、ダメじゃない。きちんと説明してなかったの？
Wait, don't. Maya, Club Prez is unrelated. Don't get anyone else involved. Why did you call her anyway?
呼んだというより来たのよ。しょうがないじゃない。だってみんなこんなにそっくりなんだもの。
Maya moved away from me and went to Club Prez. She spun around as she placed her arms around Club Prez's neck.
私たちがそっくりってどこがかしら？
Me, Alice, Saki, and Club Prez. If we were very similar, then that meant the majority of people in the world were very similar. But Maya giggled.
そのうちわかるわ。さてと、それじゃあルーティにも一つだけ大事なことを説明しておかないといけないわね。
何？夢の中で怪我をしたら現実でも怪我しちゃうとか？
Club Prez sounded pretty confident. I guess she remembered most of the details I'd been telling her these past years.
そんなひどいことにはならないわ。夢はもっと優しいもの。
Maya put her hand on Club Prez's cheek.
目を覚ましたくなければこの夢はずっと続いてくれるわ。ただそれだけは覚えておいてね。
Wait, Maya.
それじゃあルーティ、あなたの夢はどんな形かしら？
Maya laughed joyfully, and before any of us could stop her, she snapped her fingers and the world began to spin.